So this is the research that we do in this field is a bit different from the other conventional fields. I will show you here videos and more videos and some discussion and description of those videos. I hope you will like them. More specifically, in this talk, I will talk about a special class of nanomotors that are light driven. I will talk about their design and fabrication strategies, and I will also talk about some important research direction and applications of those nanomotors. So before going in the detail, let me first tell you what are the nanomotors. This could be the first question about this field. So let me tell you that any nanoscale objects or device or like even the nanoparticle that have the ability to move itself or that can provide the motion to the other surrounding objects in the medium is called the nanomotor. So the second question could be here, why do we need the nanomotors? What is the importance of the nanomotor? So well, the idea of the nanomotor, this is an interesting fact. It came initially in 1966 in a Hollywood movie. It was a very famous movie. The name, it was Fantastic Boys. So in that movie, they basically hypothesized a small, very small shape that can go inside the blood vessels in our body. And basically it can be used to do some sort of fixing of the cells or tissues or do some fixing of the broken organs of our body, basically for the non-invasive surgery. So in a more realistic way, later scientists gave a serious thought to this and they thought about forming some tiny robots or machines like those which can be used for the real serious applications, like that can go inside the body and they can kill the infected cells or the viruses or for the early stage diagnosis of the diseases or which is a very famous or exciting field of research in biology, like for the targeted drug delivery. So these all were very interesting research directions, but the immediate or a quick problem there was, if you are going to design something at this scale, like a nanorobot or nanomachine, then the first thing that we need is the nanomotor that can basically provide the motion to such small scale machines or robots. So here we all know that we have currently different type of nanomotor, motor technologies that do exist to provide the motion at different length scales and under different mediums like a water, air or surface. But important thing to note here is the scale I am talking about is less than 70 times smaller than the width of your single hair. So especially at this small scale, none of these sophisticated technologies can be basically simply implemented. There are other regions from the physics point of view, like a low Reynolds number problem and complex structure, etc., etc. So I'm not going on those details. The simple thing is we don't have technology to fabricate the existing motors or the technologies at such a small length scale. So in principle, here we need some technology that is very simple yet very effective to provide the motion at nanoscale. Something like the example comes to my mind, and something like a protein motor. So like proteins move inside the cells in our body by basically this is called the site-specific binding mechanism. They move over the microtubules. They are called microtubules shaft. This is the protein motor. It moves by alternative binding over these things. They have different chemical groups on the shaft, and it make the site-specific binding, and it moves. So this is the way the proteins move inside the body and inside the cells, and they carry the liquid vesicles or other cargoes inside the cells. We can see this in this artistic video. This is how the real biological motors move. So we can see this is the protein motor, and it's carrying this liquid vesicle inside the cell. This is actually something like this actually happens in our cells. So this was this idea was used by the by the chemist. They fabricated using this alternative site-specific mechanism technology to design the nanoscale moving devices or machines like a nano car and moving shaft. And this idea was so brilliant that they got the 2016 Nobel Prize in Chemistry. So, but if we see in the detail here, then this is too much chemistry or biology. So for physicists like me, this was a challenge to make something simple from the physics point of view. So if we see from physics point of view, then something which is very simple to design as a motor at the nanoscale could be a Janus particle. Janus particle means a particle that has the two different materials on different sides. Like this is suppose chemically active side material on this half side and a passive material on the another half side. So we call it Janus after the name of a Roman god whose name was Janus, and he has two faces, similar faces pointing in the opposite directions. So here, this side is the chemically active and this is the inactive material. So if we put this Janus particle in a chemical environment or medium, then simply this side decompose the chemical. And since the reaction happens only on the one side of the particle, so this basically creates a chemical gradient around the particle. Okay, here you will have more chemical, here you will have a less chemical. So this is making a chemical gradient across the particle surface or around the particle surface. So when you have some chemical gradient, then this is a very basic physics that the fluid flows will start around the particle. This is called the diffusiophoretic phenomena. Out of diffusiophoresis, basically to bring the chemical equilibrium back, the fluid flows will start around the particles. And the moment the fluid flows start, then following the momentum conservation law, these fluid flows pushes the particle back in this direction, following the momentum conservation simply. And particle starts to swim in this direction. And now again, if the size of particle is in nanometer range, then you can obviously call it a nanomotor because it can move itself in the medium, and this is in the nanoscale size. So this is how we design the nanomotors. Here I would say that in the first generation of nanomotors, the work on the nanomotors, experimental work I would say was started in somewhere 2007. It's not very old. So in 2007, roughly, the people started to work on this. So in the first generation, what they were doing means the first generation of nanomotors, they were using the materials, these chemically active materials like platinum, magnesium, silver chloride, etc. So with these materials, it was working fine, it was moving, it was swimming. But the problem was with those materials, you don't get the control on the activity of the motor. Like you cannot turn it on and off, and you cannot change its speed. And you can clearly imagine that if we call something motor, then like electric motors, we always, this is need not to say, we always assume that there must be a switch to turn it on and off, and we should also have a control over the speed of the motors. So in the same way, this was the problem in the first generation. And so to make the second generation nanomotors in our lab, we tried to modify this design. And what we did, we fabricated the light-driven nanomotors, which can be controlled, whose motion can be controlled completely from the outside using the different light conditions, like changing intensity or turn it on and off. So for the design of light-driven nanomotors, what we did, we fabricated the Janus particles, again the same Janus particle, with half coating of this TiO2 material. So here in the SEM image, I did this thing I did with the PVD coating, physical vapor deposition coating, over the monolayer of commercial silica particles. Here you can see the half coating of this TiO2 material. This is 50 nanometer thick, and XRD shows the NRT's phase of TiO2. And as we know, that TiO2 is a wide bandgap material. So when you illuminate it with the UV light of the matching wavelength, which is roughly less than 380 nanometer, then it generates a pair of electron and holes across the band gap of the TiO2 material. So now if I put it in the aqueous peroxide medium, then these generated electron and holes basically contribute to the redox reactions, and they split or decompose the peroxide on the one side. So again, eventually we get the chemical gradient around the particle, and so according to what I discussed before, this become a nanomotor and it starts to swim. So here the good thing is we have the control over the activity. There is a light that we can always control. So we can see here, this is now the time to see how the nanomotors basically swim. So here we have some of them in this system. And so initially you will see that these particles or nanomotors are basically doing the Brownian motion, characteristic Brownian motion in absence of light. When I turn the light on, they become active and they start swimming in the random directions. Randomness comes from the thermal fluctuations. So we can see that how do they swim under the light, and this can be seen more clearly in terms of the trajectories of these nanomotors, which is plotted from 0, center position in the XY plane. So when the light is off, then all the nanomotors are confined in a small region. They are not going anywhere. When I turn the light on, then they start moving in random directions, making longer trajectories. As we know, the catalytic activity of TiO2 can also be controlled by intensity of light. So this feature allows us another aspect or another interesting feature of the nanomotors, like we can control their swimming speed. You can see this is swimming speed by just controlling the power or intensity of light. So I can say that we have got a better control over the nanomotors by light. We can turn them on and off. We can change their speed by just controlling the intensity of light. Here, just for the comparison, I want to show you that how close is my nanomotor to the real biological system. So this is the real video of the bacteria captured by H. Berg at Harvard University. These bacteria are moving in a liquid system. And here are my nanomotors. So if we play them side by side, then you can see how similar is their size and swimming behavior. And this similarity in this, looking at the similarity in these two systems, you can appreciate the technique that how well we can design the artificial active systems at such a small length scale. Further means here you see that we can control their swimming behavior. Further, in these nanomotors, if we put a coating of the magnetic material like nickel or cobalt, whatever, under the TiO2 layer, otherwise it will block the chemical activity. So here we put a magnetic material under this TiO2, and now by applying the external magnetic field, we can actually guide their motion like a real robot or something. We can guide their motion. We can tell them in which direction you have to go in the 2D plane. So like this is the video. If you can see that it is moving like this, exactly like this path. And this path is decided by the external magnetic field. So we can control it externally. So this is another interesting feature. We can use this feature to basically a targeted drug delivery or cargo delivery in the microfluidic channels. So with this dynamics and small size, these nanomotors are useful for multiple applications. Like they provide an artificial system to study the motility and dynamics of the biological systems. The dynamics of these nanomotors can be used to design the novel materials with unique properties like a self-healing and reconfigurability. Of course, they can be used for the targeted drug delivery and water cleaning by selectively picking up the microbes and hazardous molecules. They can be used to power up the micro or nanoscale machines, or simply for pickup and delivery of cargo in the microfluidic channels. These are really interesting directions, and I'm working on most of these problems. Here in this talk, I will discuss some of them one by one. So let me first show you some interesting results that are obtained in the for the fabrication of dynamic materials using the nanomotors. So this is basically about forming the dynamic materials using the self-assembly driven by nanomotors in the colloidal system. So as we know, the colloids are considered as the building block means there's a whole branch of physics that is called colloidal physics of soft matter, where people study all these different phenomena of colloids to form the different structures via self-assembly, or large crystals or glasses at the high particle density. So these things are used in different applications, like to study the phase transition behavior, or as a substrate or template for the material fabrications, or simply for the photonic crystal applications. But the point to be noted is here, all this self-organization, self-assembly or clustering approaches, they have some big problems. They have some fundamental problems, like this assembly approach in colloidal system is kinetically slow. It may take from few hours to several days to see some structure in the colloidal system. Second is, it needs a critical particle density. Like if you want to form the colloidal crystal, then you must have at least 50% particle density in the system, otherwise nothing will happen. Another important problem is there is no reconfigurability. Means if you form some structure like this or this, then you cannot go back to change it. Like you form the colloidal crystal, suppose, then you cannot go back to change it into the amorphous state, or the vice versa. So something is formed, you can never change it. Now let's see how we can deal with these problems in a system using the nanomotors. So here I have some passive particles here in this system. These all are passive, means the silica, normal silica colloids or silica particles. So this is the equilibrium system, and these particles are doing their characteristic Brownian motion. And at this given particle density, as I told you, you always need a critical particle density. So as for this particle density, they can never form any cluster or assembly in this system. So now let's see what happens if I add a small fraction of nanomotors in this system, keeping overall particle density constant. So now I come to here. I added few nanomotors. Only these half black dots are the nanomotors. So if I add these things in this system, and if I turn the light on, basically to make the nanomotors active, then let's see what happens. The nanomotors become active. They start swimming through the passive particles. They collect them, they crystallize them. Small crystallites grow in size by collecting the more particles. Also, as they grow in size by fusion. Whole crystals grow only when the light is on. When I turn the light off, then you see the crystal melts down. I'm waiting for it. Yeah, now it melts down and particle goes back to the Brownian state. So this is the amazing observation. It shows the on-demand formation of crystals in a colloidal system without taking care of any critical particle density and in a very rapid manner. This whole activity here, it took less than 3 minutes, which was going to take forever in the equilibrium system. So in the mechanism part, means how this thing is happening. I'm not going in the very detail here, but briefly we can see that there is a very fundamental physics that if you put a normal particle or colloid in a chemical gradient, then it responds to the chemical gradient and it starts to swim following the chemical gradient. So in this system, where nanomotors can produce the chemical gradient, better to say a local chemical gradient, then surrounding particles can respond to the local chemical gradient, and they start to approach, or they start to move towards the nanomotor, and they get attached. Further, the motion of this whole thing, like nanomotor is moving, it facilitates the capturing of distant or distributed particles, and this structure grow in size. So this is how it forms a crystallite. So one thing is very clear here, that the whole activity, this whole chemical activity is governed by the intensity of light. So by controlling the intensity of light, we can control simply the interaction strength between the nanomotor and the passive colloids, the surrounding passive colloids. And this dynamic control over the interaction strength by changing the intensity of light provides a very, very nice way to tune or control the size of the structures. Let's see how. Here I have a big structure. This is the hexagonal structure formed by two layers of particles around a single nanomotor. So here, right now, this is formed at the high light intensity. So the interaction strength is high. Even particle can, in the second layer, can be trapped or can get attached to the motor. If I reduce the intensity, light intensity, then I can chop the second layer off. Now only single layer is left. If I increase the intensity again, then I get my second layer back. So this basically, what is happening here, it's showing the possibility to reconfigure the shape of the structures dynamically, which is normally not seen or not possible in the conventional techniques or in the conventional systems. So this is the beauty of nanomotor system, that you can control dynamically the structure or the shape of the structure. So once we know how to control the size of the structure, the shape can be further controlled by choosing the size ratios of nanomotor and the surrounding particles. And we can form the different shapes like a square, pentagon, hexagon, and heptagon, and so on. So here these shapes are defined by a very simple rule, that how many particles can fit in a closed shell around a single nanomotor, that you can see here. And right now they are formed at a low light intensity so that no particle can attach here in the second layer. But if I increase the intensity of light, or basically if I allow them to grow freely, like what you see in the first video of the crystallization, then we get some more interesting results. Like we can form the structures of different lattice order, like the crystals of hexagonal square lattice and the hexagonal lattice, or the amorphous structures with completely disordered state. The lattice order of these structures is basically defined by the shape of the unit cell. Like if you start with square unit cell or hexagonal unit cell, then you can always pack them in an ordered state. This is easy to pack them in an ordered state. But if you start with a pentagonal unit cell, then this is the problem with the symmetry of pentagonal lattice unit cell. You can never place it in a closed packed state. So you will always end up with a disordered state or the glassy state. Here particularly, the case of the square unit cell is very interesting. Like you will see that for the same set of particles, if I say same set, that it means the same size ratios of nanomotor to the passive particles, and also the same density. Then you see that if you grow the assembly at high light intensities, then you end up with the amorphous state. You see here, I'm growing the assembly at the higher light intensity. Then simply the particles can attach to the random locations. They break the square symmetry, and we end up with the amorphous state or disordered state. But for the same set of particle, if I grow the assembly at the reduced light intensity, then you see no particle can attach at the random locations, and symmetry of the square unit cell is preserved, and we end up with a perfect square lattice. So this is the interesting observation. It basically shows that we can dynamically control the lattice order of the structure by just controlling the intensity of light. If you know the thin film or the normal material behavior, if you grow something, then you normally grow in amorphous state, and then if you want to crystallize it, then you have to anneal it. So this is the one-way process. Annealing can give you the crystalline state, but it's hard to go back. Going back from crystalline to amorphous state is almost impossible, I would say. So I can say this is the first colloidal system that shows such dynamic behavior. We can dynamically go from crystalline to amorphous, and then vice versa by just controlling the intensity of light. So there are people who really work on the colloidal systems. They know that how difficult they work on the colloidal crystals as well as glasses, and they know how difficult it is to see them in a colloidal system. It's really a pain to fabricate the crystals or glasses in a system. And then going from one state to another state is really impossible. So I'm sure that this observation can make their life simple to some extent, definitely. So this was about forming the 2D reconfigurable or dynamic structures using the nanomotors. In the second part, I will show you how this dynamic self-assembly approach can be used to deal with another interesting or exciting problem. So like in nature, we see that there are few systems, like cells in our body. They have the ability to control their viscosity in a dynamic fashion. So this feature, basically to dynamically control the viscosity, it basically provides them a way to regulate the fluid flows inside as well as across the cell boundary. And it is believed that this feature to control the viscosity comes from the proteins that they have, that the cells have, and the proteins can basically cross-link, and they can form this type of state. Means in the initial state, they are like this, and whenever the cell wants, it can give a signal, and proteins can cross-link and form this kind of networked or gel-like state. So going from a homogeneous or uniform state to a cross-linked or gel-like state gives a change in the viscosity. So having such dynamic feature in the artificial systems could also be very interesting. And with this motivation, we use our nanomotors here. So this is a high density system where we have a very high density of nanomotors with mixed with the colloidal suspension. And in the starting, you can see this is the uniform distribution. It's almost a homogeneous system, because here the light is off, so nanomotors are not doing anything. But when we turn the light on, then the nanomotors start forming the assembly, and they also form a similar cross-linked or gel-like state that you see in this protein system. So going from a gel-like state in our system too, something like that. The schematic shows what is happening here. So in our system too, it gives a change in the viscosity. So we observed a change in the viscosity up to 10 times from the normal state by turning the activity on. And since this is a light-driven system, so everything is governed by the light, so you can always change the viscosity of a system by turning the light on and off. So this is you can do it reversibly for n number of times. So this was an interesting observation. Normally, it's not seen before in the artificial systems, and this result provides a way to design the artificial systems having properties inspired from the biological systems. And I would say this can be used for some interesting applications, like you can form the materials with dynamic rheological properties, which you can use for like growing or studying the bacterial growth, where the viscosity of medium plays a very important role. Or you can use this concept or this medium to control the motion of small objects in microfluidic channels by just controlling the viscosity or the local viscosity of the medium. To demonstrate this idea, we used a magnetic bar. Simply here, this is the magnetic bar. It's the size, you can have an idea of the size. So this bar can be rotated using the external magnetic field. If you apply a uniform rotating magnetic field from outside, then you can rotate this bar. So initially I can easily rotate this bar in this nanomotor suspension. If I increase the light or the activity of the suspension, basically to change the viscosity, then viscosity makes the rotation difficult, and finally the the bar stops. So this is the idea, or this is the experiment that demonstrates that how by changing the local viscosity of the medium, we can control the rotation or motion of the objects at the small scale or in the microfluidic channels. So this was all about the concept or the applications of dynamic assemblies governed by the nanomotors. In the next part, I will show you some interesting result. So this is, as I discussed in the starting, that nanomotors can also be used for as the artificial system to study the complex dynamic behavior or collective behaviors of the biological systems. So out of many collective behaviors out there, a few interesting behaviors, or I would say the crucial behaviors, are the collective flows, the formation of collective flows, and spontaneous symmetry breaking. Like you see here, so this is the early stage of the zebrafish embryo growth. So this is just captured experimentally captured. This is the real experimental video. Here the colors show just the radial distribution from the center, nothing else. So don't get confused with the colors. Okay, so this was captured for zebrafish embryo, but it is believed that whatever you will see in this video happens in all embryos. This is a sort of general phenomena, but it's hard to capture in the other embryos. So here you will see that initially homogeneously distributed cells in the embryo, they spontaneously start to move, they spontaneously break the symmetry, and they start the vertical flows. You can see now this is forming the vertical flows inside the circular region, which is the embryo. So exact reason behind these flows is not known. This is still not known, but it plays a very important role in deciding the location and spatial distribution of the cells. This is a crucial biological phenomena. It's called morphogenesis. So if we can understand the physics of these phenomena, or means why it's happening actually, then we can solve some critical problems, or we can solve many diseases in a very earlier stage, during the growth stage of the embryo, by just using the concepts of physics, like changing the viscosity of medium or changing some other properties of the medium without going through the biological methods. So with this motivation to understand these behaviors, means how and why do they happen, we put a large number of nanomotors in a circular chamber. They are confined in a circular region. We form this circular region by a water droplet. So it's like there's a water droplet and over the glass surface, and I'm seeing them from the bottom, from here, and all the particles are sedimented at the bottom of the droplet. So this is the bottom of that droplet this is the bottom of the droplet that you are seeing here, and from the surrounding, from the outside, it is covered by the oil. So basically the idea was to make the things as similar as we can make like this in the artificial system. Of course, it's still very different from the real biological system, but we start from somewhere. This is how we do the research. So here you see, if you compare these two, that we are very close in terms of the homogeneity and uniformity here. And you will see that if I turn the activity on by turning the light on, they also form the similar pattern. They start moving, they spontaneously break the symmetry, and they form the similar vertical flows. And this is interesting. The similarity in these flows make this system very interesting, because this can be used, or this can provide some insight of the physics behind the real biological systems. So again, my plan is not to go, we have developed a theoretical model backed up by the large number of controlled experiments, but that's not my plan to go in the details of those things. Idea was to make simple and understandable. So I can say whatever is happening there in terms of physics, whatever happening there is basically the result of two major phenomena, like hydrodynamic flows. The first I can say. So if you know that if something is moving, I discussed this thing in the very initial, on the very initial slides, that if some nanomotor is moving, then there is always a hydrodynamic flow around the nanomotor. So when we have them at the small numbers or small density, then they can always move in the random directions. They don't see each other. And they can always move in the random directions. But if you take them at the high density means they are so close packed that their hydrodynamic flows, the flows around each nanomotor, start to interact with the flows of the other nanomotor. Then some sort of coupling starts. So because if the flow of some motor is going in left direction, flow of other motor is going in right direction. If they come close to each other, then they try to come in a equilibrium state, or the more favorable state in which both can swim together, because it's simply always they are facing the hydrodynamic friction generated by the hydrodynamic flows. So at the high density, the coupling in the flows start, and they basically it forces the nanomotors to move in a same direction. Second thing which is more dominating is the Marangoni stress. So like we know that our nanomotor can basically produce the chemicals, or it can decompose the chemicals. So in either way, we can say that this is producing some chemical. And when you put the nanomotor at the interface, there is an interface here in this experiment. If you remember, there was a liquid which was water on one side and oil on the other side. So at the interface, if you have some chemical source, then that produced chemical can always change the surface tension near the interface. And if you change the surface tension near the interface, then you can always produce the Marangoni flows or Marangoni stress. So we did some theoretical modeling, and we put a chemical motor, this nanomotor, here at the interface under the same size droplet, and we see that it can produce this type of flows. Okay, so these are flows produced by the single nanomotor. And these are very, if you remember, then they are very similar to what we see in the real big droplet, the collective flows. So we can say that a combined effect of these two, that is the hydrodynamic interactions between the nanomotors and the Marangoni stress produced by individual nanomotors, they gives basically this observed collective flows and the spontaneous symmetry breaking. So in the last, I will show you one more slide, which is basically, I want to show you that in addition to form this spontaneous flows and collective flows and spontaneous symmetry breaking, similar to many biological systems, these droplets formed by the nanomotors, in terminology I call them active droplets. So these active droplets also have the ability to sense their neighbors and respond according to the position of their neighbors. Like here you see, they all are the different 4 droplets. They all are filled with the nanomotors. So if we turn the activity, then they can sense the position of each other. So, and they can decide where to go, and they can collectively set their flows pointing towards the common center. So this is a very good ability of these things. It basically shows a direction, like direction towards building up the dynamic materials which can autonomously respond to the medium, and they can change their states dynamically. So with this, I end my slides. Let me conclude the things. So we showed in the research that Janus particles can be used basically to fabricate or design the nanomotors by selectively, carefully choosing the right materials. And these nanomotors can be used to form the dynamic assemblies or dynamic self-assemblies to fabricate the materials with unique properties like reconfigurability and reversibility, etc. And these nanomotors also provide a unique artificial system to study some crucial biological systems like self-organization and spontaneous symmetry breaking. So there is a lot to do in this direction. We are working on that. So if you are interested in the research activities and the published whatever is already done, then you can also check all these things on my website here. This is amnlab.in. So with this, I end my talk, and now I welcome all or any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Singh, for such an interesting and informative talk. Now we have some time for some questions. So the first question is from Novin Senetra. How did you overcome van der Waals forces in clustering?
Yeah, van der Waals force is a difficult thing. Van der Waals and Coulombic both are really difficult. But the good thing is, if you know the DLBO theory, so they are van der Waals and Coulombic. So suppose two particles may have the strong van der Waals forces, but you give them opposite electrostatic force to counter the van der Waals, then they can never come close. So by basically controlling the surface charge, means what I'm saying means if you have two particles with negative charge on the surface, then by electrostatic forces they will never come close. So if they have no charge, then van der Waals force will be very dominating. So by basically controlling the surface charge, in scientific terminology we call it zeta potential. By controlling the zeta potential, we can play with these things.
Yeah, another question is from the same person. Does surface tension have its effect on? Is there any effect of surface tension? He wants to know.
In the last case, means in the droplet part, I discussed this. It plays a very important role. But when you are working with the nanomotors inside the fluid, then it's not very important. Because if you are at the interface, then it will be very dominating. But normally with nanomotors, we are always inside the fluid medium.
Another question is from Vishal Kamathe. What type of simulation or computational techniques required to observe these type of phenomena?
So this is a Brownian dynamics.
I think it is out of the talk. Question is out of the scope of the talk, I think. We can.
Yeah, one can work with many things. Means there are a standard particle model you can start, and this is a standard model that's called the Brownian dynamics. With that you can start. You can use with Monte Carlo or FDTD, whatever you want. Means this is a different thing. It depends on in which field you are more comfortable.
Yeah, right. Another question is from Abha. Does the adherence of surrounding nanomaterials to nanomotors depend upon the shape, size, and surface defects of nanomaterials?
At the scale at which we are talking about basically is much bigger than the atomic or molecular size. So all that matters is the surface charge, which is the van der Waals forces if there is no surface charge. So which plays basically the crucial role. Shape doesn't play a big role. Also size plays a big role in terms of like if you increase the size, basically you are increasing the hydrodynamic radius. and the diffusion coefficient means the force that's required to drag the particle. Of course, depends on size. It's a kT by 8 pi eta r. Means this is simple Stokes law. So if you increase the size, then you have to apply the more force. This is easy. We can understand.
Right. Another question is the name is not written, so I would say unknown. What frequency light have been put on this drop of oil and water mixed drop?
So this is again like I'm using, means across this talk I discuss only the TiO2 based nanomotors. So for exciting those nanomotors, I always use 365 nanometer wavelength. But anything which is shorter than 380 nanometer will suffice. So this is the basic thing.
Yeah, there are many questions, but due to lack of time, we are unable to take more questions. But we request you to send email. We will definitely respond to you.
Sure.
And let's then thank Dr. Singh again for such an excellent talk. Thank you, Dr. Singh.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.